Welcome to Caregiver Cast with Mary Elaine Petrucci. Are you overwhelmed raising a family, working full-time, caring for a parent or grandparent? It can be challenging when you're doing it alone. Caregiver Cast helps busy, burned-out professionals reduce their stress and overwhelm to create a better caregiving experience for themselves and their loved one. Caregiver Cast brings caregivers together with experts who provide information in a variety of areas. In each episode, you'll get tips on topics such as finance, legal, medical, self-care, community resources, mindset, and more. We're here to make your caregiving journey a more rewarding one. Acquire the confidence and skills to be a more capable caregiver by implementing the resources and strategies from these expert thought leaders. Get a community of support, resources, and strategies for your caregiving journey inside the Caregiver Lifeline community. Visit caregiverlifelinecommunity.com. And now here's your host, Mary Elaine Petrucci.
Hi, I'm Mary Elaine Petrucci. Welcome to Caregiver Cast. My guest today is Amy Todisco, and she will be talking about your best life ever. Let's try this out. And before I formally introduce Amy, I'm just going to give you some background information about her. So Amy Todisco has been a Build Your Best Life coach for over 14 years. She's also a nationally recognized green living expert and early pioneer in the green living movement, who was recently featured on HGTV. She's a passionate public speaker and is the technical editor of the book Green Living for Dummies and co-author of the Amazon bestseller You Make a Difference. In the summer season, she leads unique experiential food.
That's okay. Experiential.
Hi, welcome to Caregiver Cast. I'm Mary Elaine Petrucci, your host. My guest today is Amy Todisco, who will be talking to us about your best life ever. And before I formally introduce Amy, I will give you some background information about her. Amy Todisco has been a Build Your Best Life coach for over 14 years. She's also a nationally recognized green living expert, an early pioneer in the green living movement, who was recently featured on HGTV. She's a passionate public speaker and is the technical editor of the book Green Living for Dummies and co-author of the Amazon bestseller You Make a Difference. In the summer season, she leads unique experiential food and farm tours and personal growth and wellness retreats on her organic farm in Vermont. Year-round, she empowers, inspires, and nurtures people, primarily women, in the next chapter of their lives to go from who they think they are to who they're meant to be. She helps clients build their best life and make their big vision board goals come to life through virtual vision board secret masterclasses, one-on-one online mentoring coaching programs, and in-person retreats on her organic farm. With over 35 years of personal and spiritual growth experience and research, and 30 years of green, healthy living expertise, Amy has channeled her personal and professional learning to create a living change lab for personal transformation, both online and at her organic farm in Vermont. Welcome to Caregiver Cast, Amy. How are you?
Thank you so much. I am doing very well today. How are you?
I'm doing well. So let me ask you this. You started on your personal growth and spirituality path when you were young.
Yes.
What started you on that path and what have you learned?
Well, what started me actually was my mom. She took something called the EST training, EST, which was, I think, Erhard Seminar Training is what it stood for. It was a very popular personal growth seminar that happened in New York City over the course of 2 weekends. And my mom had taken it, and she decided that both my sister and I needed to take it, because once you do some sort of a transformational experience like that, it's like you speak a different language almost, and you want to have a common frame of reference. So I was 13 at that time, and I was the only young person in the adult training, which was really kind of a mind-blowing experience. And I was totally hooked from that. Hooked in the sense that it made me aware that we actually create our own lives, and how to do that. And so from that experience, I launched into many, many other workshops, seminars, read hundreds of books and videos and whatnot. And that has sort of been the basis for all the work that I do.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So can you explain a little bit more in detail about how you changed?
Sure. Yes.
Taking this EST program or any other
Yeah.
spirituality programs that you...
Yes. I think some of the things that I came away with are that, we have this soul living inside a human body, and that we come to this earth for a particular reason, or maybe multiple reasons. In my case, I feel like I'm here as a catalyst for positive change. So whatever I put my attention on, that seems to be my mission. And so part of that is helping, well, first sort of working on myself and understanding who I am and how I can create the life that I want, the life of my dreams. And that's like an ongoing process. And then taking those lessons and tools and helping other people do the same thing. So, one of the things I've really focused on a lot is relationships, and how to communicate effectively, how to be a really good listener, how to create connection, how to set appropriate boundaries with people. I tend to be an overgiver. So that's been an important lesson for me, which I'm still continuing to learn. But that's some of the things that have come about as a result of that experience.
Okay, thank you very much for giving us some more examples.
Sure.
So how did you go from personal growth in spirituality to green living?
That's a really good question. So I think my summer when I was 14 or 15, I ended up working in a health food store in New York City, where I grew up. And that was an eye-opening experience, just to see what organic vegetables were and learn about nutritional supplements and herbs and homeopathy, Ayurvedas. And I got really interested in that topic because my mom was actually a pretty good inspiration as far as healthy living. Though we weren't eating organic at the time, her Aunt JoJo, who grew most of her own food, was an early inspiration for both her and for me. And so she kind of introduced my mom to the whole idea of, homegrown, really healthy food. We didn't even we had no junk food cereal, we had no sodas. And my stepfather was a chef. So food was a really big deal. And so I started with the health food store experience, and then that just kept growing. I kept wanting to learn more. When I was pregnant with my daughter, and I would regularly travel through health food stores like they were a candy store for me, I came upon this little paperback book called The Non-Toxic Baby. And I was shocked to learn that there were all these toxic synthetic chemicals in our everyday products. Shampoos, cleaning products, paints, carpets. I mean, everything that we put in our homes, a lot of these products have chemicals that then outgas into our indoor air, which we then breathe. Some of the things we absorb through our skin, like in a shower. And I was amazed that this was happening and it was legal and nobody was telling us about it. And so I think, like most pregnant moms, I felt like I wanted to do everything I could to not only protect myself while I was pregnant, but most importantly, to protect my daughter. And so that kind of took me in this direction of learning how to create a really non-toxic household and which products were actually better than others. And so I really went on this green living journey, and it was not super popular at that time. There were a few experts that were talking about it that I was learning from, but a lot of it was sort of trial and error. And so once I became educated about these topics, then I started a conversation. I was living in Marblehead, Massachusetts at the time. And I had learned that letters to the editor in the local newspaper were the most read part of the paper. So I started introducing some of these topics into the local community through these letters to the editor. And I got things kind of riled up. And what was great about it, though, is we got a conversation going. And then I started I created an Earth Day experience, a one-day event that was really cool. It had workshops, we had organic food for sale. I had all these green vendors with different kinds of products, some companies that were not local that were donating to the cause, and live music, and it was like a catalyst in the community for other new groups to spawn. And then we discovered that this little seacoast community had 3 types of cancer above the state average, and that freaked people out. And so I decided, go ahead, did you want to ask a question?
No, I was just going to say that's really remarkable because Marblehead is beautiful.
It is beautiful. And the next town over is Salem, which has this power plant, coal-fired power plant. And, we all knew that there was ash coming from that power plant because a lot of people found it on their patio furniture. And so I started a group called the Marblehead Prevention Project. And the whole idea behind that was to research what could the potential environmental causes be of these types of cancer. And so one of the best outcomes from that group was working with the local board of health. And one of the things that was very popular in Marblehead, even though there are these teeny little, postage stamp size lawns, a lot of people were hiring chemical companies to spray the lawns to get rid of the dandelions and any other weeds, or spraying trees. And so, good luck to you if you wanted to have an organic garden, because your next door neighbor might be spraying, toxic stuff that was drifting over. So we worked together, and they actually tightened up the regulations in Marblehead as far as what could and couldn't be used. And so that felt like a really big win.
Most definitely. So were you practicing gardening or
Yes.
that?
Yes. So even though I grew up in New York City, when I finally got to Marblehead and we had one particular rental that had a pretty good sized lawn, I had my first big garden instead of just putting stuff in, pots on a patio. And I mean, I went the whole 9 yards. I got the soil tested. I put in all the different amendments that I needed that, balance the soil out. It was one of the best gardens that I've had. And it was just so exciting to actually have land. And now here I am living on this beautiful organic farm in Vermont where I've been for 13 years.
That's incredible. So tell me a little bit more about how you, arrived on the organic farm in Vermont, and
Sure.
what have you done during these 13 years you've been in Vermont?
Yeah, so I've actually been in Vermont for 20. I first moved here in 2001 with my former husband and my daughter, and did a bunch of gardening at that house. And then after my husband and I split up and got divorced, I got on Match.com and I met my organic farmer, soulmate, Dave, who's been living on this land his entire life. And he had an organic farm and farm stand. And so I've been helping him over the past 13 years really build this farm and turn it into an education center. Beyond this amazing food that he raises, we've done a tremendous amount of education. So I've run kids camps, personal growth and wellness retreats. We started a nonprofit to help other people learn how to sustainably, even if it's just for themselves or if they want to turn it into a business. And then these unique food and farm tours that you mentioned in my bio, I started that, I think, 5 seasons ago. So I'm all about, experiential learning and helping people get the tips that they need, the tools that they need to really take their life to the next step.
Okay.
I have a snoring dog over here.
Well, he's welcome as well.
Oh, thank you.
So this sounds fantastic to do organic
Yes, thank you.
farming, or at least starting an organic garden in wherever you live.
Yes.
How could, like, a caregiver who is pretty stressed out, how could they start living and growing some more organic fruits and vegetables.
Yeah,
So
that's a
it
great
can be
question.
more
So, I mean,
sustainable.
one of the things about that, especially for someone that's stressed out, is the time spent with plants, especially if you have the opportunity to put your hands in the soil.
Mm,
Um, that is a really good stress reliever. And there's a cool thing that if you have a healthy soil, which is really the basis of a sustainable farm or sustainable garden, a healthy soil means that the soil is alive with microorganisms, whereas in conventional agriculture, it's really just dirt that's holding the plants.
mm,
On an organic garden, you have these incredible, you have earthworms, but you also have these microorganisms there that are constantly breaking down the organic matter to feed the plants that you have intended. And so a caregiver that spends time, working in the soil will probably inhale a little bit of that dirt, and which that creates a serotonin response in the brain, which is like a happy hormone.
mm.
That's one thing, but also just the joy of putting a seed in the ground, and it's absolutely remarkable how a tiny seed can grow into this giant plant that's bearing fruit or flowers or vegetables. Um, so you can start small. Like if you just have a sunny windowsill, you can start with maybe some potted herbs, right? Or if you have ground to plant in, and then you want to look at where it's located, how much sunlight do you get? Ideally you want to have at least 6 to 8 hours of full sun for most vegetable gardens. You want to test your soil, make sure you have the kind of nutrients in there that you need, and if you don't, there's lots of things that you can add to it. Um, in fact, I actually wrote a how-to course, which I think I'm going to have to grab and put it on my website again, that has videos and pictures and all the information about how to do this. Um, so yeah, just starting small and then building and growing the things that you really love to eat. That's probably the first way to start.
Thank you for that, because I think you're right. I'm just tending to this little acorn squash that I have.
Oh,
Um, I'm working really hard to water it and make sure that it's growing, and it has a lot of leaves. It'll be interesting if it survives the hot summer here in Colorado.
oh,
But I would agree with you. I think just having something else in addition to caring for someone, getting in the dirt or just, watering it and seeing how, like you said, it just grows, and um, the food that you produce is so much better than what we get.
it is. And I'll tell you, unfortunately, the US population is one of the unhealthiest in this world. And so anything we can do to create healthy food that's going to nurture us. So kind of like the healthy soil grows the healthy plants, the healthy body creates a healthy person. And so I feel like if we're eating better food that's really nutrient dense and, free of toxic chemicals, that's going to support our immune system, obviously. That's going to support us in being able to care for whoever we're caring for that much better. And, I'm sure everybody knows the old adage about when you're flying, and if, God forbid, you're in an accident, you're supposed to put the oxygen mask on yourself first, because if we don't take care of ourselves first, we're going to be completely depleted, and then we're not going to be any use to whoever we're taking care of. So I think gardening and eating well is one way that we can take care of ourselves.
Those are, yes, that is so important and so critical. I totally agree with that. I think, yeah, you don't have to spend, a whole lot of time after you initially put in the garden. And I agree, just doing it as part of self-care, or even having the person that you're taking care of possibly help you out
Oh,
there.
absolutely. That would be amazing and a great experience for whoever you're caring for, and obviously would improve their health to some extent as well.
Mhm, definitely. So this path of yours is really remarkable.
Oh,
So
thank
you
you.
went from personal growth, spirituality, to starting and growing things on an organic farm in Vermont.
Yes.
So how did you become a coach through all of this?
So that's a great question. So I became a coach 14 years ago, and that really came from the whole personal growth and spirituality piece. I have always been interested in how people think, how they communicate. So I was in my college experience, I majored in psychology, but then I got really clear that I didn't want to be a psychologist or a psychiatrist. I didn't really want to listen to problems day in and day out because I'm much more solution oriented. So I wanted something where I could actually help the person go from where they are today to where they wanted to be. And so coaching felt like a much better fit. And so I actually took two different year-long coaching certifications, one in spiritual coaching, and then the other one was basically the rest of it, health, life, and business. And, as coaches, we're supposed to pick a niche.
Mhm.
And I find that so frustrating because I've helped people on so many different topics, whether it's, somebody that wants to create a business out of a passion, or somebody that wants to improve their health through, improved eating and detoxing their home and office and growing their own food, or, the big one is relationships, right? How to help people save and dramatically improve a relationship or attract a soulmate. So I feel like, I've had a lot of different experiences helping people on many levels. And I love it. I love helping people. And I love the idea that, I can have some sort of a positive impact that can help their life be better. And that's really what drives the coaching and the retreats. So the retreats are like an in-person experience like that for 5 days.
Oh my goodness, it sounds incredible.
Oh,
So do
thank
you
you.
live on the farm during those 5 days?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes, and so I've rented places nearby for people to stay. We do have a little bit of housing here at our house, but typically I will rent a bed and breakfast or some lodging area around this Mad River Valley of Vermont.
okay.
Yeah.
So let's just maybe focus on one of those coaching
Sure.
topics that you mentioned.
Sure.
So what could a caregiver
hmm
expect in terms of improving their relationship with the
hmm
one that they're caring for, especially if they never had a really good relationship when they were growing up?
So that's a good question. So you're talking about like a parent and child type of
Mhm,
relationship?
mhm.
So obviously it depends on what the challenges are of that parent. If it's a dementia and Alzheimer's type of condition, that's going to be a much harder experience as far as the relationship in the way of true communication, right? Because
Right.
there's a limit.
Mhm.
So assuming that's not the case, and we all have trauma from our childhood, and it's kind of like the buttons that that people press are usually the ones that our parents installed, right? So if we're directly experiencing the challenges that maybe we had in childhood that are still happening in adulthood, that
Mhm.
can be really tough. So I think that the main objective of working with a caregiver who's still, taking care of or being, very involved in the life of their parent, is the actual healing and letting go of these early childhood experiences. Because it's pretty well understood that from sort of birth until age 7, we're these sponges that absorb all kinds of messages and beliefs in our environment, right? So it's not just our parents, but obviously our friends, the teachers that we encounter, the society. So all of these ideas and beliefs have been programmed into us. Many of them do not support us in a healthy way. A lot of times they're not
Mhm.
great messages, and often they've been passed down from generation to generation, right? So part of the work with folks in that sort of situation would be to, first of all, discover what are these triggers? Like, what are the things that happen with your parent that really tick you off? And then kind of uncover what's the earliest experience that you remember of that and what happened. Because typically, what we'll find is that we'll have this kind of trauma and then it'll keep getting repeated, whether
Mhm.
it's with that parent or somebody else in our life. It doesn't really matter. It's like once that pattern is established, we've almost come to expect it and on some level attract it to ourselves.
Mhm.
So the first step is really the awareness, right? Becoming aware of what it is that's triggering us, because what might annoying me might not annoy you,
Mhm.
right? And so there's different ways that you can work through that once you've become aware, one of the things I love to do is something called EFT, Emotional Freedom Technique, which is tapping.
Mhm.
And there's a great guy on YouTube, Brad Yates, I think it is, Brad Yates. He's got YouTubes on all kinds of different topics, and you just follow along and tap. So let's say you're feeling really angry. There's a YouTube that he produced that you can tap along with to see if you can release that anger, because the first step is the awareness, but then the second piece is, okay, how do I let that go? How do I remove that as a stressor or a pattern that I keep reattracting to
Mhm.
myself? And often that takes, the help of some other person, whether it's EFT. There's also something called NLP, neuro linguistic programming, which is a really good tool too, to help you uncover, these original traumas and how to release those. And so there's a lot of different tools that we can use. But I think the first step really is the awareness.
Mhm. Thank you so much. I know.
Sure.
Um, it's for me, it wasn't really like that. I mean, I think taking care of my mother was a challenge because she had Alzheimer's.
Uh,
My father did have some memory problems, and I could see how we both needed to do some work to not trigger one another.
sure.
But I think I feel like I did the best that I could with the tools that
Absolutely.
I had at the time.
Yep.
So by using these different tools, what kind of results are you getting with clients that use like the EFT or neuro linguistic programming?
Well, I'll give you a perfect example. Actually, something happened with my daughter. Um, she was having a panic attack one day,
Mm.
and her hands seized up so that she couldn't tap for herself. And so I just tapped for her and, used the different spots on her that one would use, and said the
Mhm.
words for her. And it would be something along the lines of, even though I'm feeling really freaked out right now, I love, honor, and respect myself. And then just go through sort of whatever you see is going on. And it's a lot easier to follow somebody else than, come up with it on your own at first. But once you become comfortable, then you can kind of come up with your own words. So within minutes, her hands freed up
Oh,
and she was released, and she was able to calm down, take a breath, and just kind of center herself. So, I mean, that's just one little example of what you can, I mean, the power of these kind of tools is really remarkable. So, yeah, again, going back to whether it's dealing with somebody that has Alzheimer's versus somebody that doesn't,
mhm.
and that you can actually have a conversation with, um, there's there's a couple of really excellent tools that I like. One of them is Dr. Let's see, Hendricks is his last name. There's a husband and wife team that created something called the Imago or Imago, and really what that is it's a communication practice where, let's say we have two people, and the
Mhm.
first person is going to have the chance to speak first, and very succinctly they share what they're upset about. Now, the
Mhm.
person that's listening hears that without trying to formulate their response, which is what we typically do, right? When we're, especially if we're in a heated conversation, we're already like, oh, I've got to, respond to that. We don't do that. We are listening to hear so that we can then replay back to that person what we think we heard. So
Mhm.
somebody, let's say Betty says, hey, Frank, I'm feeling really angry because, I was expecting you home at 6 o'clock and you were, an hour late and you didn't call me and I felt, like you didn't care or whatever it was. And then Frank hears that and says, okay, so what I think I hear you saying is that because I told you I was going to be home at 6 and I didn't call to let you know I was running late, that really upset you. Is that correct? And then, she gets the opportunity to say yes, or no, actually what I meant was, and then clarify. So that's person A's turn, then you switch, and the other person gets to do the same thing. And so the whole idea is that we're listening deeply to hear what that person is feeling. Whether we agree with them or not, it doesn't even matter. The
Right.
point is to make that person feel heard and then to feel heard ourselves. And so that leads to much deeper communication and much better understanding of who each of the people are and what their needs are. So then, the next level is, okay, what I would like from you if this were to happen again is please let me know, that you're running late. Just send me a quick text, whatever it is. So you get the idea, I think, right?
I do.
Yeah.
So how long is like a coaching, length of coaching does somebody do with you when they're looking for support
Yeah.
or change in
So,
relationships?
yeah, I mean, I think that at least 3 months is really a good amount. I mean, I think some people like to start month to month, but other people are clear that there's a lot that they want to work on. So 3 months of meeting once a week online, on a Zoom call like this would be the method. And then I have resources that I share with them, and they have the opportunity to, either Facebook Messenger or text me in between sessions if something comes up that they really are struggling with. So yeah, I'd say probably 3 months is ideal for the average person. And it's totally cool if they want to start with a month and then move on from that point.
Okay. Thank you so much. You've shared so
Sure.
much rich information for caregivers, how they could possibly do their own personal growth, do some organic gardening, and then getting some support for their relationship with the person that they're caring for. Can
Exactly.
you give us like 3 takeaways that caregivers can respond to and act on after this interview is concluded?
Sure. So you mean like 3 steps that they might take?
Yes, the next
Okay.
part.
Sure. So, well, one thing I'll offer is if somebody is interested in having a conversation and letting me know the challenges that they're experiencing and if I might be able to help them, I'm happy to offer a free 30-minute session on Zoom. So
Okay.
that would be one thing. Let's see. For a second thing, I guess the best thing is probably to go to my website, which is catalystforchangecoach.com. And I have a few resources on there that will be helpful. So I might actually put a few of those EFT YouTube sessions on there for folks to use. And I have a goals checklist, which I typically use for my monthly Vision Board Secrets Masterclass, and that might be helpful because I think one of the things that my intuition would say is the most important thing for a caregiver is that if they're not taking care of themselves first, that's going to lead to so many different issues, health problems, resentment, I'm sure you are well aware. And so as much as there's this demand to take care of this person, the first person that has to be taken care of is you, the caregiver. And so yeah, I'm trying to think of what a third a third option might be. I think just resources of things to read that might be helpful, and that's something I can provide as well.
Well, thank you very much for sharing all that great information. I hope people do call you and get started on their personal growth journey,
Yeah.
so that they can be the best caregiver that they can be for the person that they're taking care of.
Yeah.
Can you give us your website once again, please?
Sure. It's catalystforchangecoach.com.
Okay, thank you so much. I want to thank you for coming on and giving us so much rich information about how to make a personal growth change, how to start organically working in our garden, and how to improve our relationships with
My pleasure.
caregivers. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Caregiver Cast today. Get a community of support, resources, and strategies for your caregiving journey inside the Caregiver Lifeline community. Visit caregiverlifelinecommunity.com. Get involved with the show. Send your email to mpetrucci2002@gmail.com. And we'll see you again next week for another episode of Caregiver Cast.